Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture number 7 in our course State Organizations Management أو إدارة المنظمات الحكومية, level 3, Accounting Department, English Section, Faculty of Commerce, الزقازيق University. The lecturer is Dr. Ahmad Amhawi for this lecture. It is a completion of chapter 3. It's part 2 of chapter 3 that we have started in the previous lecture. Chapter is about the anatomy of public organization, bureaucratic power, and politics. Let me remind you, the whole chapter is about the internal side of public administration as a system, and mainly we are focusing on the sources of values, the internal sources of value. احنا كنا we had this outline from the previous lecture. We gave an introduction. We focused on the culture and cognitive processes. We haven't yet introduced ideology, though it's mentioned in the previous lecture. And bureaucrats ideology also we introduce in this lecture. And in this chapter, inshallah, we will introduce the cognitive processes and value system, foundation of bureaucratic power and ideology, the organizational structure, and bureaucratics as politicians, and a concluding slides about sources of value. Okay, let's start with the bureaucratic ideology. اللي هي ideologia. It's a subset of organizational culture, and it's what you believe is the best for a specific issue. You believe that the best for economy, Egyptian economy for example, that we go right wing, we do it in the capitalism way. This is my ideology. Another ideology is to do it in the left wing, which is the socialism way. So what is your ideology about sports, your ideology about family, right? So we always have such ideology. يعني we have عقيدة معينة, we have some best way of doing things. Let's see the definition here. It's a verbal image of the good society and achieve means of constructing such a society, right? So what is the best way for doing this? What is the right way for doing that in a main issue? Of course, this is one important source of internal values, because this is what people believe what is right in something. طبعا ideology helps in some aspects. It emphasizes the benefits of agency policy and de-emphasizes the cost of these benefits. If you have some ideology and you believe in that, so you are able to explain the benefits of agency policy and how the costs of introducing such policy are not that big comparing to the benefits. So having a policy, having an ideology, بيديك عقيدة معينة, بيديك إيمان, right? You have a belief in something. Also, such ideology enable you to justify why do we need to be bigger and better why do we need to expand, not to be smaller and contract the agency. Also, ideology give you the ability to emphasize the desirability of its efficiency and centralized coordination. If you have an ideology in your public organization, it helps you promote its achievements and future capability rather than failure and current inability. So it gives you a drive, actually a drive. يعني بتديك كده حماس وبتديك ability to explain and show that you have beliefs in something, and how do you manage such a place. Ideology also as well, completing what it helps, provide shortcuts to policies, programs, and most acceptable ones by external society. طبعا ideology is something deep inside people, and they all collectively believe in something. So they are stable, they are coherent, and they help bureaucracy, البيروقراطية. They help bureaucratic people. Bureaucratic people are the people working in public administration. They help them to cope with uncertainty. So we have an ideology that this is the best way to deal with children, homeless ones, for example. And if your ideology to do that showed some problems, so because you believe in what you have done, you have an ideology, you are able to deal with such uncertainties, such problem. You explain why, because we have this, and that would produce something positive in the future, and so on. Bureaucratic ideology are more flexible than political parties in response to changes. This is برضو one aspect of ideology. They are more flexible and they can change with comparing to political parties. طبعا political parties they always have platforms احنا قلنا عملنا كده زي ميثاق, right, that shows their main ideologies, but ideologies in public are more flexible than the ones with political parties. ليه؟ لأن a political party أنت صعب تغير, it's very hard that you change what you believe in. لكن in a public administration you may change, yeah, but not that easy, of course. طبعا top level officials are the ones who يعني establish or form such ones and communicate it downward to people below them, and promote them and explain them to the external societies. We have هنا what's called bureaucratic symbols. Professionals in an agency are a source of new policy, having the expert knowledge and a goal to expand the agency influence. Of course, هنا in that slide we are talking about three important sources of such ideology in any bureaucracy, in any bureaucratic organization, such as public organizations, of course. Professionals, political executives, and civil servants. The professionals اللي هم top managers that are hired, appointed, متعينين يعني, and they get promoted, يترقوا to the top levels. We have political executives, that the one that came by elections, and or appointed by parties, and they may control the professionals and the civil servants out there. طبعا the difference here ان we have the professionals, they are more knowledgeable, they know the work, they are the experts, they are the ones who seek expanding the agency influence. The political ones, their main concern is outside, to serve people and to respond to الشعب. And how can we control such bureaucracy for the benefit of the people? Right in the middle we have the civil servants, الموظفين العاديين بقى اللي هم civil servants stay longer than the politicians, and they have better chance to influence because they are the one who do that, who they implement that. فطبعا what they do represent symbols, رموز that are that form the ideology of any organization. Who uses the ideology? What we call it هنا, أو التكست call it the consumers of ideology. طبعا we have externals, users, and internal ones. Some of the externals are important external, we call it هنا active externals, right? So if you have an ideology for department of our Ministry of Finance مثلا. So all the investors, all the companies are active external to the ideology of such ministry. يعني لو وزارة المالية مثلا لها ideology معينة، الactive external ليها كل المستثمرين. All the companies, the businesses, right, whatever their policies, directions came from some ideology, they affect them. However, we have some passive external ones. External like they are not really influenced. So they are maybe remotely affected by the agency. So المدارس المستشفيات, they may be not influenced by that, but somehow remotely, indirectly influenced. Also internally, we have some internal parties that are active users or consumers of ideology, and some other are passive as well. The active internal, they deal with it directly. Any employees inside, they get influenced by the ideology, or any also as well managers or employees or politicians, or they get influenced but in an indirect way. The term constituency the political term. We use it instead of using the term stakeholders that we use it in management courses in general. يعني constituency هنا is related to the one the stakeholders that have the right to vote for you, right? So it's the same like المعنيين by your organization, your business, your ideology, right? But in politics, they are the ones who can vote and choose you to represent them. That's what it meant by this is why we use constituency. It has some political flavor. So bureau, constituency, they are vested interest group. You see here, it is the one that is related to stakeholders. Vested interest group, supporters, clientele, direct beneficiaries. You don't use customers, you use clientele اللي هم الزباين يعني بتوعك. It's another political term that we have here. Direct beneficiaries and suppliers. So it's an important term whenever we are talking about the consumers of ideology. Symbolic management, it's all about symbols that are generated by the ideology of the organizations. Symbols are manifested or shaped in terms of plans, manifestations, strategies, goals, objectives. These are symbols that management use to show their ideology. Ideology involves investing time and effort to build external support and internal cohesion. Its information should be provided freely to its constituency using TV, press releases, and so on. This is how public administration professionals, politicians, civil servants defend and show and promote and communicate their ideology by some symbolic management arrangement. They use the press, they use the media, they explain to the external supporter, to the internal ones. Okay, التكست هنا الحقيقة مسميها symbolic management. You see هنا there is some political expressions we have here in our course, of course, because our course has a lot to do with politics. طب what do we do whenever we have some outmoded ideology؟ يعني ideology يعني عفى عليها الزمن. Usually public administration organizations, they may يعني be stubborn، يعني دماغهم ناشفة. They don't change their ideology although it's outmoded, so they retain such obsolete ideology and keep manager behavior consistent with it. This is the worst way to deal with outmoded ideology. Internal ones, right? So their main source of values is outmoded ideology and they defend it that way. Or they may retain the obsolete ideology but modify their behavior consistent to their interest interests of their beneficiaries. Here we have some improvement. We keep the ideology, we defend it, and the press and the media, right? But our behavior differs slightly according to what changes or what improvement should be done to according to the interests of their constituencies. طبعا the best way to deal with outmoded ideology, and this requires change, that is very hard because ideology are very deep and very hard to change them. Uh, uh, it's in the minds and in the hearts of people working in public administration organizations. The best way and the hardest one is to advance a new ideology more consistent to the interests of the beneficiary. Another point we have in our chapter here, organizational effects and cognitive processes and value systems. Cognitive processes are influenced in any organizations by some important aspects like the jargon. Jargon, it's your special language and vocabulary you use for a specific work profession or a business or something like this. Such jargon affect how you think, how you understand life around you, how you learn and so on. jargon معناها اللغة الخاصة بتاعت أي business. يعني for those working in computers, they have their own vocabulary. They have those words like RAM, ROM, HDD, right, synchronize, and so on. Such language that other ordinary people, they may not understand this. That's only people working in such business, they have this what's called jargon. Also as well in public administration, they have their own jargon, and they provide them with some power, and some such power affect their cognitive processes. Such jargon is inherent in bureau ideology. They carry meaning and they carry values and influence their cognitive process of bureaucracy members. Many of its vocabulary need definitions that nobody understands unless you are in the business. It's an element of bureaucratic power, as we mentioned earlier. The more obscure, the more difficult for others to challenge it. يعني انت بتحاول ان انت your vocabulary, your words ما حدش فهمها غيرك. يعني that would give you power over people that don't understand this. ده برضو part of internal influences of public organizations. We have another term here, bureaucratic power, نفوذ. That such power if you notice, we are talking about what happened inside a public organization. We have here power as well. We have what's called jurisdiction areas. It's دي منطقة التخصص بتاعتك أو الصلاحيات that you have according to your position, organizational structure, and units. According to that, you have some power. Also as well, you may have that power because you know something, you are expert in something. Okay, and also power may come from some political capability of bureaucrats. You have some ability to influence. You have some groups that support you. All these are called political capabilities. You can talk, you can motivate people, you can lead people. All these are called political capabilities that gives you power as well. You have political support from legislators and executive branches. يعني انت التوب ليفل كمان بيساندك. فانت this is called political support as well, that provide you power as well. Support from cliently or other vested any constituencies, the term we use, that give you power as well. One important part of what happens inside the public administration is power is very influential for managing a public administration. Another source of influence, of source of value, internal value, هو how your organizational structure is shaped. According to theories in management, organization structures are shaped according to 4 different bases. According to the purpose, this is the first base, البروسيس, البليس, and الكلاينتلي. يعني organization is shaped according because it has according to its purpose. For example, some regulatory organization that has a specific purpose for environment protection, right? So you will see its structure is divided, its levels and departments according to types of environmental protections. A branch to the land, another to the water, and another to the wastes. المهم ان هي ايه how it is related, how the structure is related to the purpose of such organization. Another organization is shaped or structured according to the process. They have, and this is very important for routine ones, the ones that are dealing with repetitive routine transactions. So for example, if we are talking about dispensing grants to public, or one related to some process for serving citizens to finish some paperwork, the process is very important. You will find the structure of the organization is divided into departments according to the steps of dealing with such a process. We first do that, right, to serve the citizens. So we dedicate a department for such step, and then we do this, okay, in our process. So we dedicate or we designate a department for that, and so on. In dispensing grants, for some people we may have different departments, different level and managers according to the process. A process means how the work is organized. We may have a structure according to place, زي local government. In local government, we have governorates, cities, districts, villages, and so on. So the structure is highly shaped by the place. The last one is highly democratic. هنا we are dealing with being very responsive to the customers, to the clientele. Example, supporting students or farmers. This is a structure that is غالبا يعني الorganization structure بيبقى how do we deal with the demands and needs and the services required to students or farmers or citizens or people working اللي هم merchants in the street or something like in dealing with traffic or something like that. Different types of structures according to the basis, the philosophy of shaping your structure. طبعا these bases influence the organization values. If you are shaping your structure according to cliently, خلاص يبقى الفاليو الأساسية بتاعتك إن أنت تبقى ديمقراطي, and أنت to be very responsive to people. If it is for the process, يبقى your main value here is to be very disciplined, is to make the steps. It's a process. Is to deal with efficiency. This is another value. Is to not to make any mistakes or any waste and so on. If it is place, so the main values will be derived from the area, attributes of the area. المحافظة نفسها ايه هي أهم what it requires and so on. So based on the basis, here we will have the values used for structuring such organizations. And now we have two examples هنا. Cliently, being responsive, and the process being very efficient. I mentioned that. One important example of how structure affect the values, whenever we have pyramid structure that we studied many times in our management courses. The pyramid, the classical one, the hierarchical one. طبعا large organizations, they follow this. And if you have a pyramid structure, you respect the levels, you respect the formalism اللي هي الرسمية reporting to higher level, unity of command, and so on. Such values are very respected and appreciated in pyramid structures. I mentioned that هنا, values of hierarchical, like unity of command, the chain of command, narrow span of control. All these are principles of management, classical management theories that we studied in level 1 سنة أولى in management courses. طبعا the more centralized an organization, the more difficult to change values of organization member. يعني usually the hierarchical one, the old fashioned one, are centralized, so their cultures and their internal values very hard to change. Also one important theme in studying organization structure here is that the structure of organization reflects its political power of an agency. Establishing a new unit in the organization so interests in its activities. If you are a manager of a public administration place and you enlarge it, you give more power to some department, ده معناه ان انت you have some values that make you provide more power to such department. So if you look to any organization and found some areas has bigger ones, you can tell what values such organization is. So structure really reflect the values adopted in such organization. There are 6 models of place based ownership of economic enterprises as follow. ده مبدأ مهم برضو. How structures of place based ownership، يعني في حالة المنشآت اللي هي ملكيتها ملكية place based. طبعا ده في المنظمات الحكومية الكلام ده. We have 6 types هنا. According to our text, we have 6 types here. Models of place based ownership in public administration. Community owned corporations. It's like in a village or in a city that they form a corporation or something, and it's owned by its citizens, and طبعا they have shares or something only for people living in this village or in this city. So it's called community owned corporation. Such corporation maybe not for profit like this one, it could be non-profit corporation. It's the third sector. We have طبعا private, we have public, and this is the third sector, non-for-profit corporations. Corporations that is made for established for providing a service for people, and they may rely on grants and donations and stuff like that, or maybe by the government and so on. المنسبل البلدية, municipal enterprise, this is local, is owned by a local government في المحافظات وفي المدن, different ones. Also you may find an organization that is owned by the consumer بتاعتهم. يعني مثلا أولياء الأمور in a place, they may build and establish a school for their kids, or a hospital, healthcare place, or some جمعية تعاونية للإسكان مثلا, for example, that is owned by a group of people to build some buildings for settlement or for theirs to live. Also, we may find some organizations, smaller ones, employees in some place. يعني موظفين في الجامعة عندنا, they may form. I think that the law prohibit this, يعني especially in universities. يعني in some places they may form some يعني an organization owned by the employees. Also, we have the last one, community development corporations, اللي هي ال CDCs. This is non-profit help for generating jobs and services. You may have some corporation that generate jobs and services for the owners of such corporation. The last slide we have here in that chapter, it is يعني especially in the modern way of dealing with public administration issues, bureaucrats should work as politicians. This is what is recommended by the text. And bureaucrats usually look for their work as it is specialized work. They should be efficient and competent of whatever they do. But because it's public place, they should work as politicians as well. So let's read that. Bureaucratic leaders must perform as politicians to protect the status of their agency. يعني عشان تخاطر انت you preserve and being able to present your ideology, you have to understand and be responsive to people. You have to work as a politician and be able to talk to them and explain and promote your ideology. PA, public administration behavior, is the outcome of bargaining among individuals and groups within government. Bargaining power depends. You see, bargaining because you work as a politician. Bargaining power depends on position, beliefs, responsibility, and interests of individuals and groups. Also, working as a politician, you need to have some bargaining skills and power. That power depends on such things we listed here. And there are some human and individual ones you need to or to develop in yourself, such as being persuasive, able to affect and influence people, perceptions of bargaining advantages, your understanding of how bargaining is important for you, affect the information you get from people and provision you provide for people, and being able to control and manage your public organization. That was the last thing we introduced on this chapter. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be quick because I wanted a lecture that should be in 2 hours be presented in like 30 minutes or something like this. Thank you, and next lecture inshallah will be on chapter 4. Thank you.